So this is just some of the fundamentals of anthropology, and probably this is intuitively something you would all understand anyway, that when we distinguish race and racism, we are distinguishing the ideas about race, historical ideas about race, which have to do with outward physical appearance, how you see, what you see when you assess a person first and foremost. And of course, that has so much to do with racial profiling and with the way Americans, we read race in this country and in other places, that, you know, people make, they're prejudging or they prejudice a situation based upon outward physical appearance. And of course, that's skin color and all the other things which form what we think about as race and you know, physical features. Racism is an ideology that has been built around what we notice, the differences that we notice among human beings, which is a matter of science, and can be, you should be in that matter of objective science. Racism is not scientific and it's not objective. It basically states the positions. It's an ideology that says that one race is superior or inferior to others. And that has its own history. And of course, every time the racial classifiers have been Europeans, and always they have designated so-called Caucasians or, you know, Europeans as the most advanced races, and usually Chinese and Mongolians and Asians are in the middle, and always a Negro is on the bottom, or blacks are on the bottom. So race and racism, or, you know, something I thought about for 35 years, I've written a book about race and racism. It's just very very fundamental to understanding what we're going to be speaking about. Other types of identity have to do with ethnicity, and that is typically something which is self-identified. Who are you? I'm a Haitian Creole, or I'm a Haitian, I speak Creole. You know, or Latino, Hispanic, Arab, all of these terms which are matters of, we think in anthropology, of self-identity. Rather than I'm saying who you are, you tell me who you are. So this identity which comes from sense of self and sense of being and background and history and all of this is very important. And of course that can also apply to religion, which is part of your identity. That's a matter of self-identity as well. I wanted to mention to you that I am of a Ukrainian background, so what's going on in Ukraine has affected me because my mother was a full Ukrainian and a very strong Ukrainian nationalist. So I've been thinking about her a great deal these days and how angry she would be. Colonized and who, you know, saw Haiti as this great possibility of independence and freedom. This can never be underestimated. It was a tremendous impact that, of course, was also responsible for the fact that the United States doubled in size because of the Louisiana Purchase, because Jefferson was so fearful about the effects of the Haitian Revolution on you know, enslaved Americans or enslaved people in the Americas or in the United States. So the importance of these events on world history is so enormous, and it infuriates me to this day that Haiti is not given the recognition that it deserves for the part
slavery and racism are the means, the ideology, and the practice of capital accumulation and state formation. The Haitian example, of course, is central to our discussion today. But wherever there was state formation and capital accumulation, there was slavery. So slavery existed in Africa before Europeans. Certainly existed when there were Europeans, long before, 2 millennia before the
because if you even
the Atlantic slave trade. So, for example,
Toussaint Louverture, in the army of Toussaint Louverture, they were not all black.
Right.
It's never that clear cut, white and black, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a very important element for people to remember. And as I was talking to Carolyn about that writer, I still have that book. I have to send it to you. It's the book of Achille Mbembe, who talking about the new Negro.
Yeah.
The new Negro is another, Negro become a term for minority. It's no longer based on the skin color.
That when you come from the north, you are not sensitive about that color thing, feelings inferior. You come from the north and you go ahead in Haiti with that feeling that you are all that. And once you leave the north of Haiti, you're gonna be like, you're gonna smell the coffee. You're gonna whip it.
It does sound like there were seeds of racism that existed in Europe that co-evolved with the institution of chattel slavery and enslavement of Africans specifically. And as to the question of why Africans, I've learned that when Columbus was first in what we now call the Americas on the island Hispaniola, he was accompanied by the Spanish priest Bartolome de las Casas.
Developed in the continent, which are not very well known outside of Africa, that could sort of predispose some of this activity, which developed later in the post-Columbian era, to be a source for enslavement. And so I think we need to take a very broad look at the continent itself and the effect that enslavement of Africans had on the continent itself. It is estimated that over the 4 centuries of the great Atlantic slave trade, you know, we really don't know. It's anywhere from 10 to 20 million Africans were transported from the continent to the New World. And Haiti was one of the greatest recipients and one of the richest colonies. So this is a legacy which is a very powerful one, and which descends, you know, to this current era where some of those who profited the most were this mixed race group of people who were proven to be very useful in terms of their ability perhaps to negotiate, you know, 2 different worlds, shall we say. So this was a very conscious aspect of colonization, of exploitation, the use of race, I would say, to really, you know, divide and conquer, to use that old expression. And it works so well. It works to this very day. It's working in this country, that by dividing people racially and pitting them one against the other, this can be accomplished. So Haiti, with its great history of emancipation, the beacon that it represented to the world, the model that it presented for Africans who had been colonized and who, you know, saw Haiti as this great possibility of independence and freedom, this can never be underestimated. It was a tremendous impact that, of course, was also responsible for the fact that the United States doubled in size because of the Louisiana Purchase, because Jefferson was so fearful about the effects of the Haitian Revolution on, you know, enslaved Americans or enslaved people in the Americas or in the United States. So the importance of these events on world history is so enormous, and it infuriates me to this day that Haiti is not given the recognition that it deserves for
the courage and confidence. I think colonization and slavery played a number on us where we, as Black people, have lost a lot of our confidence. And there are a few exceptions. Our heroes definitely were very confident. They questioned and challenged the status quo. Here is a man in the 1800s who were, you know, going toe to toe with those people that he was calling savants at the time. And we, unfortunately, most of us sitting here only knew about him recently.
Yeah.
And it's somebody that we should have studied in school, as in high school, as a toddler. So I feel like when we meet and talk about these things, and we've always done that, we don't take it forward. We talk about it and we move on. Now, how do we change this? How do we bring this to our kids? How do we bring this to the next generation? I know we can't come up with a curriculum in Haiti, but how do we make this man and others like him more accessible to those that are coming? Because you can't become what you don't see, right? So if we know how courageous and how daring this man is, the next generation coming up is going to learn that from him, and is going to dare to question all these things that they've been feeding us, that we should never believed in. So how do we take this? How do we take this to the next generation is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about this?
Yeah, Jackie, very, very interesting question, but we also have
There is no Haitian who is going to feel inferior to any French person, then or now. So this was, I think, very humorous for him, although he was too much of a gentleman, shall we say, certainly knew and loved the great, no personally, but loved the great civil rights hero, John Lewis. And I just wanted you all to know that John Lewis did come. He was a tremendous supporter of the NAACP, which you know is a National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And it doesn't matter what you call people, colored or black or Negro or whatever, it's the same. And NAACP, you know, said many times over the years, they said, why don't you change your name, you know, to black people? These are some of the books that, you know, I've written. Race and Racism is in two editions, in 2006, 2019, was updated. Of course, the equality of the human races. And I want to just remind you of that cover, which was designed by an African-American colleague and great friend over the years, who's now no longer with us, but who used the slave, the tight pack of the slave ships for the border on the equality of human races. And it's something which I think was a beautiful design, but you know, ugly in it's the meaning. But this very conscious African-American artist wanted to make that point. And you know, that was the first edition, and that was in the year 2000, the new millennium. I've also written about race and identity in the Nile Valley, which is quite complex, and that could be a subject for another time, because you know, racism unfortunately is not, you know, just linked to the West. And I would just have to say personally that when I was a purist and thinking about racism, I thought only white Americans could be racist, and the whole history of racism has to do with how, you know, the U.S. has evolved. But it was a great eye-opener when, in living in Sudan for many years and getting to know the country and the cultures, some of the differences that were, frankly, instituted during the time of colonialism, but became highly racialized between North and South Sudan. They are distinctively different. You know, the Northern Arabs are lighter in skin, but Southern Nilotic people, South Sudan, they are darker. But that was definitely something that was manipulated by the colonialists, so that racism ended up being a very important factor, unfortunately, in the outcome of what happened in Sudan. That's a subject for another time.